In section 6.5, we're going to look at adding and subtracting polynomials. So to add or subtract polynomials, we are going to place the like terms together. And then we are going to add or subtract using sign rules the coefficients only. Last step number 3, very important, do nothing else with the exponents. The exponents are going to stay the same when we are adding and subtracting polynomials. So leave the exponents as is. Okay, so if we look at this one, number 1, it says find the sum or difference of each. Let's start by figuring out what our like terms are. So I have a 3x and a 6x. A 4y and a negative 2y. Those are my like terms. So I'm going to place my like terms together and I'm going to add or subtract the coefficients. So for my x terms, I have 3x plus 6x. 3 plus 6 gives me 9x. And then 4y plus a negative 2y gives me plus 4y, or 2y. And that is my answer. Okay, let's look at number 2. I'm going to put my like terms together. So right here I have my 2b squared, 3b squared. I've got my 4 and negative 3b lined up. And I have my constants at the end lined up. So I can add these straight down. So here, negative 6 plus 1 gives me negative 5. 4b plus a negative 3b gives me 1b. And then finally, 2b squared plus 3b squared gives me 5b squared. And this is my final answer. Notice I'm not changing any exponents, leaving all my exponents the same. I'm just adding my like terms together. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, we have 4a squared and a squared. Now, the tricky part here is there is this negative sign outside my parentheses here. So let's highlight that. This negative sign is important to keep track of. So this really says 4a squared minus a squared. So 4a squared minus 1a squared gives me 3a squared. Then I have a negative 3a minus 6a. So don't forget this minus here. Negative 3a minus 6a gives me negative 9a. And then my constants, I've got a plus 4 minus 1, which gives me plus 3. And this is my final answer. Okay, number 4, we have 2h and h. Again, these are lined up, so those are in a good spot. And then we have our constants, 7 and 2. Now, here, instead of adding, I'm subtracting. So if I have 2h minus h, that gives me 1h. Then I have 7 minus 2 is plus 5. And this is my final answer. Okay, number 6. Again, I have 6m squared minus a negative 2m squared. 6 minus negative 2 gives me 8m squared. Leave the exponents the same. Then my only term with a m is this plus 2m. So notice I don't have any m's in my first one, so that's like a 0 m's. I have 0 minus a positive 2 gives me a negative 2m. See that? Minus 2m, negative 2m. Then my constants, I've got 7 minus a negative 3, which is plus 10. Okay, last example. Again, I have a subtraction sign in the middle here. So another way we can deal with this subtraction sign, so we don't forget it on each term, is we can distribute our subtraction sign to each term inside the parentheses. So that would be like adding a negative to each one of these terms. So I could rewrite my equation here. Instead of having a minus, it would be a plus minus 5ba squared. This minus negative 3 would turn to positive 3ba. So I'm switching all the signs inside my parentheses. Negative turns to positive, positive turns to negative. And this just might make it a little easier for some of you to do in your head, because now I have a plus sign in the middle instead of that subtraction sign. So my first polynomial is going to stay the same. Right, so now let's look at my like terms. My first one, I have 2a squared b. Now I'm looking for another a squared b term. Now it doesn't have to be in that order, it could be ba squared, as long as it has a b with an exponent to 1 and a with an exponent of 2, they are my like terms. So this term right here would match ba squared. They've got the same variables with the same exponents. The squared is on the a and the 1 is on the b. So I can combine those two numbers. 2 plus a negative 5 gives me a negative 3 a squared b. Now I could write ba squared. Usually we write the letter with the higher power first and then the second letter. Next I have a ab. Here I have a ba, a to the first, b to the first. Again, doesn't matter the order because I can multiply in any order and I'm going to get the same answer. So that's why those can be switched around. So now I have negative 3 plus 3. Well, that turns to 0. So that would be plus 0. Then my next like term, I have a with a b squared. An a with a b squared would be right here. 4 plus a negative 7 gives me a negative 3 ab squared. And then finally, my last term, I have 2b squared and no other matching terms. So I'm just going to leave that at the end. It's got plus, plus, so positive 2b squared. So that makes my final answer negative 3a squared b minus 3ab squared. Now careful, look at the difference here. The squared is on the a and here the squared is on the b. We got to watch out for those because we can't combine them because they're not the same variables. Plus 2b squared. That's my final answer.